Are you wondering how to get back into running after 2 weeks of not running? If you're only running for stress relief, do you need to do strength training or speed specific runs? How to plan your fuel and hydration for the New York City Marathon, given the start time is a lot later than most races. These are just some of the questions I'm going to be answering today in this Ask Duane episode, where I answer listeners' submitted questions. Today, I'm going to cover your training specific questions, your nutrition specific questions, as well as gear for runners. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to get back into training safely after a cold or an injury. Do you need to do strength training or speed work if you're just a casual runner? And how to balance tempo and interval speed specific work within your training. We're going to talk about running with a hyperactive dog and how to avoid overtraining for yourself. We're going to talk about that late race planning in terms of nutrition, fueling, hydration, and how you set yourself up for success for a marathon like New York. And should your fueling strategy be different from your weekly runs and your long runs, as well as which super shoes are best for wide feet, specific hydration vest recommendations, and then a fun question. I will share with you some of my favorite snacks. So, did you know that I will actually answer your question that you have in the next one of these episodes if you submit it below within the show notes using the form I've created that compiles all of your questions? If you didn't know, now you know, right? So you can get your question answered on the next one of these Ask Duane episodes. So when we get enough questions, then we'll do the same as we're doing today, and then I'll answer them live on the show. Last week, I tackled your running injury prevention, and recovery questions in episode 240 on the Healthy Runner podcast. So if you didn't catch that one, be sure to go back, cue that one up if you missed it. I honestly had so many questions. We had to break these past two episodes into two separate episodes because if I talked for over 2 hours, you would probably not listen. So I figured I'd bucket them into different categories. And today we're really tackling training, nutrition, and gear. So those are the topics. We'll start with the training questions. And the first question is, an injury followed by a cold caused me to only run twice in a 2-week time period. So how do you get back into training safely is the question. All right. So we only ran twice in like a 2-week time period. And I think this is probably going to be pretty common, honestly, during this time of the year as we are heading into the end of summer. I know a lot of people are vacationing probably this week, last week, maybe even next week. And sometimes maybe the training goes a little south. And I know I took some extra time as I moved my daughter, Olivia, into school a couple days ago. So I am officially a proud college parent now, and I have a college freshman. So I know training has been crazy, right? So you guys might be in the same boat. You might miss a week or two of training. So timing of this right now probably applies to many, but it also applies to those that like this listener submitted, maybe had a cold, maybe had a minor injury, and you pretty much, you haven't trained in 2 weeks. So how do you resume running? And it's a fantastic question, honestly. And in this 2 to 4 week time period, I kind of clumped those together. If you've missed 2 to 4 weeks of training, the good thing is that you've only lost 0.3 to maybe 0.7% running fitness. So you haven't really lost any running fitness. So that's a great thing. This time period off of running is really small, minor setback in training. So if you've been consistent throughout the year, this is going to be like not a major blip on the radar at all. And what I recommend at this point in time, if you're in this situation of around 2 weeks, that you really start in my phase 2 of my kind of return to run program. And that's like the rebuild phase. And what I'm going to recommend for you at 2 weeks is to really go back into running at 50% of the volume that you were running the first half, and then 75% volume the second half. So what do I mean by that? So let's just say you are a 20 mile per week runner and you took 2 weeks off. So then really getting back into running, I would say 50%. So you're going to start with pretty much 10 miles per week that first week. And then the next week, you're going to go into 15 miles per week. And then the third week back, you're back up to your 20 miles per week. If you were a 40 mile per week runner, then you would start at 50%. So that would be like 20 miles per week that first week running. And then you're going to go up to 30. And then you're going to go back up to 40. So if that's a 2 week time period, if it's 4 weeks, then we're going to kind of double that if you missed 4 weeks of running. So I do have that all laid out for you if you want to get the download of my Return to Run blueprint. And this time period is specifically going right to phase 2. So you don't need to do like phase 1 where we're doing structured walk run intervals. That is more for those that are really battling an injury, maybe still having some symptoms, and or you've been out of running for a longer period of time. So this isn't anything major, but as you noticed, you did need to make some adjustments. And all of that running, by the way, would be easy running. So you wouldn't be doing any speed work if you were doing speed work before that time period. So hopefully that answered your question. And for those that might be in a similar situation, but it's only 1 week, then really that essentially is no fitness lost at all. And really going into 1 week off, you're pretty much, don't go back into 100% that first week back. Maybe do like 80% volume. So it's not as much of a cutback in terms of like weekly volume. I want you to go back to like 80% volume the first week, and then the second week back running, then you're back up to your 100%. So again, vacation time season, a lot of you guys maybe took a week off. So when you get back into training, don't try to catch up in training and be like, oh, I missed a week of running. Let me like add those miles to this week. Because then that's going to be a recipe for disaster, because now you're going to be doing too much too soon, and you don't want to get injured. So we're all about injury prevention here. So hopefully that answered your question. Excellent question. If you want more details, the Return to Run blueprint, you can just go to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/return to run. Next question. I enjoy running, especially for the mental clearing miles. I love it. Yes, we love those mental clearing miles. So I run 3 to 4 times a week for an hour and a half each run. I'm not working on speed. Is this a good plan? I've been wondering if I should change things up. I hear you talking about strength training and wonder how to fit that in. For the record, I am a 59-year-old female. I work full-time Monday through Friday. Thank you for considering my question on your podcast. You're welcome. Thank you so much for submitting it. So this is really a great question, because I'm so happy that you asked this question, because I know there are many people listening to this right now who probably fit in a very similar situation to you. You're really not running because you're looking for performance goals. You're not running because you love to do races. You're not running for the medals, right? Like, you're just running because you enjoy running, and you're just getting out the door 3 to 4 times per week, getting in those mental clearing miles, and you're running for stress relief, right? So that's kind of the genesis of your question. So I guess to tackle the first part is, should you work on speed? You definitely don't need to. So only if you are getting bored with your current training, and or you previously have done track workouts before. Maybe you were a track and field athlete, maybe in high school, maybe in college, and it's like a part of your life that was like 20, 30 years ago, and you're just like, wow, man, I would love to like bring that back. Then I would recommend for you to do it. But if you've never done speed work before and you're happy with getting in those mental clearing miles, it's providing you the stress relief that you need, you definitely do not need to do speed work whatsoever. You don't need it to stay healthy as a runner. So it's more for really performance benefit, and or to kind of shake things up if you are getting a little bit bored. The thing, given age, and if you've never done speed work before, just so you know, if you do wind up tackling some speed work and you're like, yeah, I am getting kind of bored a little bit, then less is more, right? And even just starting out with something as simple as strides at the end of one easy run a week is enough to add a little play into your run and add a little fun into your run, honestly, where you're running for 20 to 30 seconds, you're gradually increasing speed. You're not going a 10 out of 10 effort, like full-blown sprint, but you're running faster. Your stride's opening up. Your hips are opening up. It's fun to kind of do that for 20 to 30 seconds. And then you can do a 40-second recovery where you're just jogging, you kind of turn around, jog, and then you do that 4 times. That would be where I would start, just so you know. And then, in terms of speed work from there, I would be very careful with the really fast speed work. We're going to actually get into that in the next question in terms of like tempo runs versus interval runs. So that will kind of segue into that question. But you certainly don't need to by any means. And it's not going to help like keep you healthier if you add speed work in. If anything, we're increasing the risk, especially given age and, if you've never done it before. Okay. So the second part of your question is, should you work on strength training? 1000%. Right? So not 100%, 1000%, you should be working on strength training, because we need to strength train in order to run, even if that running is just mental clearing miles and stress relief, and you're just doing it, right, to get out the door, and you're doing it for yourself. You're not looking to like increase speed. You're not looking to increase performance, place in your age group, get more medals, right? So strength training is going to help develop a strong running body, so you can enjoy lifelong injury-free running, no matter what those running goals are. And, if you don't like to do races or you're not running for performance, that's totally okay. And the added benefit of doing strength training, especially in your middle-age years, especially since the person that asked the question is a female, is going to be really prevention of muscle mass loss, which is normal biology of aging. As we age into our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, we lose muscle mass unless you actually strength train. And that's been correlated, loss of muscle mass has been correlated within the literature in terms of like decline in function as we age, walking speed as we age, increasing risk for falls, and all of those things. Like, it only takes one fall for you to actually fall the wrong way, fracture a hip, which is the most common fracture that we have in the aging population. And did you know that everyone who fractures their hip, less than 50% of those people who fracture their hip actually go back to walking independently without an assistive device, meaning without a cane, without a walker, right? So you don't want to fracture your hip. And especially being a female, as you're aging, you are a little bit more at risk than us males. Not that males can't get a hip fracture, but we do know that females are. So strength training is going to be super protective for your body. And it's all about prevention. Prevention's key. So yes to strength training, and not only because you're a runner, but because it's healthy for your body. And if you want to learn more about the benefits of strength training, how to go about that, check out episode 183, where I really covered why strength training is your foundation for running. And you can get some exercise videos that are instructional videos that I've provided, all within my Strong Glute Guide that you can download for yourself at learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/strong hips. And you're going to get my 5 hip strengthening exercise routine. And then also check out the 25-minute strength routine on my YouTube channel that was recently published. That will be a great starting point for you if you've never done strength training before. So, excellent question. I absolutely loved it. And we get a lot of clients that we actually work with within our coaching program who aren't training for races. And that's the thing that I love about the clients that we work with. Like, some run coaching, businesses are kind of like, we're going to just get you like your next PR, and we're just going to like run your body into the ground. You're going to run fast and, train for a specific race. The thing that I love and I'm really passionate about, and within our program and how we really work with our athletes, is that we are looking at the long run, pun intended, for longevity and lifelong injury-free running. So strength training is that keystone part of that. So thank you so much for asking your question. Hopefully I did it justice to answer both the speed component as well as the strength component. So next question is another training question, is how do you think about balancing tempo and interval workouts when programming week to week with the goal of increasing both VO2 max and lactate threshold? I'm currently doing one speedwork session a week and switching between the two, alongside 25-ish easy miles. Is there a better way or standard that doesn't involve getting caught up in the weeds of detail? So great question here. And your approach is one that is sound in terms of injury prevention. I'm not sure if it's exactly meeting your goals if you do have performance goals. So in terms of programming speed work, whether we're looking at tempo runs, kind of working that lactate threshold, or we're looking at interval runs, so we're doing shorter, faster bouts, maybe on a track, maybe on a flat paved trail, really functioning to kind of improve your VO2 max, it's really going to depend upon a number of variables. One is going to be your health history. So have you been healthy? Have you had any recent injuries? If you've been really healthy, then we can go on the more aggressive side, meaning faster running, which is going to be more of those interval workouts. If, depending upon your age, so I'm not sure how old you are, who submitted this question, but if, let's say you are, north of 50, even north of 40, so you're a master's runner, we call ourselves in our 40s, right? We do have to program that a little bit more conservative than you would in your 20s and your 30s. And then the other variable that I would say would really matter and dictate which of these I program for my athletes is, what is your goal race if you are racing? So if you're doing a race, it's really going to depend upon that goal race. So I talked about health history. We could be a little bit more aggressive. Same thing with age, obviously. Right? You're in your 20s. Like, yes, we can double down on interval workouts. We can really hit those hard with less risk for injury in the musculoskeletal system. I really do find for my masters runners above 40, we need to make sure that if we are doing interval workouts, that we are really periodizing those. So we have a specific, really, I don't program more than 3-month block, 12-week tops of interval specific work. Also having cutback weeks in there, meaning recovery weeks. So every 3 or 4 weeks, I'm not having you do an interval workout. So I wouldn't expect someone to be able to do 12 straight interval workouts, right, for 3 months. Because honestly, that's going to lead to overtraining. That's going to really increase the risk profile of you getting a common running related injury, especially if you're over 40, right? So, thinking about that. And then usually for most of my masters runners, especially, and this really goes to the third variable, is goal race, especially if you're running half marathons and marathons. If that's your goal, half marathons, really improving your lactate threshold and being able to hold a faster pace for a longer duration of time. So actually doing, that faster running for 20, 30 minutes within the workout, maybe even creeping up to, 35, 40 at that pace is going to translate into improving performance, definitely for the marathon and the majority for the half marathon. That's not to say for my half marathoners, I don't program in interval workouts and work on improving VO2 max. But if we really needed to focus and have some clarity on where you're going to improve in your performance, it's going to really be improving the lactate threshold and the tempo runs that are going to improve that half marathon and marathon performance. And a lot of people will argue also 10K. 5K, that's where, if that's your goal race, then yes, you definitely want to do some VO2 max work. That's going to help improve your 5K time. That's not to say that you wouldn't do lactate threshold as well, because that's important, but it is really going to improve that time. if you're younger, if you're really fit, you've been healthy, you can add in VO2 max work. So doing the interval runs for half marathon training cycle. But again, it's going to be very like specific. There's going to be a purpose. There's going to be like a 3-week build in terms of what you're doing. Maybe you're doing repeat 800s on the track. I would typically program those as doing like 4 by 800 meters the first week. The second week doing 5 reps. The third week doing 6 reps. The fourth week I'd give you a cutback week where we're not actually doing an interval run, and then we maybe build that out to 1200s, maybe do repeat miles, right? Like kind of that progression. So you're not doing the same workouts every week, but it's building and it's improving the fitness for those specific areas, VO2 max, as well as looking at lactate threshold. And same thing with like tempo runs. There's a way to periodize those and progress them. So I have done actually what you've mentioned for my runners who are, let's say, are casual runner, right? And you are looking for stress relief, but you like to inject a little speed because you enjoy the workouts, right? You like that mental stimulus maybe, and you're really looking to stay healthy. So I've actually programmed that myself for some of my clients where I do flip-flop weeks where I go like an interval, maybe do a track day one week, the next week we're going to do a tempo run. So there's nothing wrong with that, but if your goal is a specific race performance, it's not going to be the best use of your programming. So I hope that answered your question, and I think I hit all the parts that I really wanted to talk about. Obviously, if you have any other follow-up questions, feel free to shoot a message to me. And if some of the stuff that I just mentioned for those listening did go kind of over your head and you're not sure like what I just talked about, like that's exactly why you would get a run coach, right? Because we would get into the weeds and the details and really make sure that your performance is improving in those specific areas. And we're going to ask for feedback. We're going to look at your rating or perceived exertion. Were you in the 6 to 7 out of 10 RPE for that tempo run during those tempo miles? For the interval run, was it an 8 or a 9? Were you breathing heavy? That last rep or two, are we not seeing drop off in your speed with your paces as we go through each rep? And that's how we kind of modify as we go based upon how you're responding to the training. So that's kind of what we provide clarity on within our coaching program. But awesome question. Loved it. Last training question is for our canine friends, our dog runners. The question is, I adopted a very hyper dog. I've been running her 3.5 to 4 miles daily. Is this going to lead to overtraining for me? Excellent question. Short answer is yes. You need to be very careful, especially if your baseline running volume is not like where you're speaking of now. So it's not in that, let's say, 30-ish miles per week zone. If that's not your baseline and your baseline's like 15 or 20, and now you're running 3.5 to 4 miles every day with your dog, yes, that is going to definitely lead to overtraining, just as if you didn't have a dog and you just spiked up your mileage like that. So that's first off. The second point I do want to make, because you said daily, is you need a rest and recovery day. So you should not be running 7 days a week, because recovery is a part of the training. That's how we allow our muscles to build, grow, and to actually deload for the day for the musculoskeletal system, so you can tolerate the demands of running. Now, I am not a dog owner, but my esteemed colleagues are. So I did actually send this over to Coach Whitney as well as Brooke, our registered dietitian for runners within our Healthy Runner coaching program. And they are dog runners, and they provided some suggestions as well to decrease your injury risk and to not overtax your canine as well. So here are some of the suggestions. Is can you consider going on walks versus runs with your dog? Or perhaps take your dog to an open field and engage in training. So consider like different types of stimulation for your pup, whether it's like not only physical, but also mental stimulation, right? So Brooke adds that, 15 to 20 minutes of training sessions, whether it is like practicing commands like sit, stay, or like find a toy kind of sessions where you can like hide a toy, ask the dog to find it, is a great way to like engage your dog with mental stimulation while you are actually like recovering on the couch. So remember, recovery is one of the 6 steps to growing as a runner. And then Whitney also adds and recommends puppy classes as well. They do training, but also socialize the dog with other dogs. So that would help them burn off some of that energy if you do have a hyper dog. And we actually did a full episode about how to run with your dog back in episode 131. So that may also be helpful for you to get some other tips that Whitney provided on how to run with your dog. So now we're going to kind of switch gears and go into the questions that were submitted with regard to nutrition. So first question is, I am running my first marathon in November, New York City Marathon. Congratulations, by the way. And I am nervous about waiting so long before the start of the race, and I'm not sure how I should plan my eating and drinking when my race most likely won't start until 11 a.m. or later. I'm used to running around 5 a.m. So this is super common for anyone running New York, not just yourself or anyone running Boston. And, you're going out much later than you're used to going out for your long runs, especially for like New York, like you're, starting to train end of summer, like you're going out early, right, to avoid the heat. So this is something like completely different to your system. So we really recommend practicing some of those long runs, not every single run, but some long runs for race simulation, which would allow you to really try a bigger breakfast than you would, normally do before a long run. And then, actually eat that, able to digest, wait hours before you go out, and then, do your traditional pre-race fuel. Because that's what you're going to have to do on race day. And the biggest thing about, race day strategy that we talk about quite often is nothing new on race day. So you got to practice this, and you can't just like, think it's going to work on race day. And if you do practice this, that's going to reduce a lot of your pre-race anxiety. Like, this is your first marathon. Like, you are going to run 26.2 miles, which is an amazing accomplishment, right? We don't want to have you worrying about like, how is this going to work out with me, doing my fuel at a different time period and waking up so much earlier than I normally do before a run. Like, you have to practice it so you can get the confidence that you need. So race day comes, you're not even thinking about that. It's like, hey, I practiced it. You know what? I remember that 14 miler I did where I fueled that certain way. And then I would definitely recommend your 18 or your 20 miler, to do that same thing. So you've like done it twice in training. You know how your GI system worked. You know how you felt. You felt that you had enough fuel on board, right? You didn't feel flat. You didn't feel fatigued. So it's going to, like, that's going to be the strategy. Like, there's no guessing. Take away that guesswork. It's going to decrease pre-race anxiety. All right. So that will be key for you. Next question that we have submitted is, how do I know when I should fuel during a run versus a normal long run? Should I keep it the same, meaning every 4 miles, or should I aim for fuel every 45 minutes? What do you recommend? So we do want consistent fueling during runs that are more than an hour in length. So it really depends upon what your pace is and if your easy runs will be longer than 60 minutes or your like weekday runs will be longer than 60 minutes. I would still recommend taking in some fuel before your everyday runs to train your GI system to run with fuel, right? That you can run while it's digesting fuel. So I recommend that. But in terms of like the fueling during the run, you really only need to do that when your runs are more than an hour in length. And for the long runs, we recommend every 45 minutes at minimum. But if you're really looking to take in more nutrition and you fueled before, you're used to fueling during your long runs, and your goal is to really take in more nutrition now so you have more fuel on board for race day, then we recommend every 30 to 40 minutes of that long run. And that's what a lot of the newer research is showing now. The more fuel you can get, the more calories, the more carbs that you can ingest during that long run, during your race, the better your performance is going to be. But you do need to train for it. You can't just start to add that in race day. So again, you want to implement that in your training. And if you want to learn more about how to choose your run fuel with our registered dietitian, Brooke, she had a fantastic, informative episode in episode 182. So you can cue that up in the Healthy Runner podcast. And now we are going to switch gears to gear. See what I did there, guys? All right, corny dad joke number one for the college dads out there. So the question is, I have wide feet and want to find a good super shoe, good was in all caps, for my next marathon. Do you have any suggestions? I have tried the Nike Vaporflies, and they feel a little too snug on my midfoot. Thank you. Thank you for submitting your question. I love talking super shoes. All right. So the situation here is you have wide feet and you want to find a good super shoe. You've already tried the Nike Vaporflies and they were a little too snug in the midfoot. So yeah, super shoes, for those that don't know, they are kind of the combination of the carbon plate, the super foam, the very light foam, and a higher stack, and the geometry of the shoe is a little different. So it really kind of forces you onto your forefoot to propel you a little quicker, make you a little faster for race day. So these are like performance-based shoes, right? So you're really looking to get your best race day performance out there. We actually did a full episode, and I don't have the number off the top of my head. My apologies for that. But if you scroll back not too far, about 8 to 10 episodes, we did a Super Shoes 101 episode. So you can check that out. That's first off, where we really did a deep dive into super shoes. But I do have some recommendations here because I have tried a bunch of the super shoes out there myself. So I have some experience. I also do have a wider forefoot. I do have a narrow heel though. So I don't have a wide foot all throughout. But super shoes can be tricky because they are narrow, they are performance based. So if you have a wider foot, you do need to be careful. And the overwhelming majority of folks, and I've watched lots of YouTube videos myself, and I have a lot of experience with Saucony Pros, the 2, the 3, and the 4 version. They really have the best upper in terms of room for the midfoot. So they're a great blend of comfort and speed. So they are very performance based and poppy, and they're going to feel light on your feet. You're going to feel like you can kind of get some quick leg turnover with them. So that would be my first recommendation for you. Others that I've used myself personally, the Adidas Adios Pro 3 I haven't tried the 4s, but that was a bit wider in the forefoot. For me, but the one caveat here is, and I did wear this shoe in the Disney Marathon last year for the Dopey Challenge. The upper is not the most forgiving. It's pretty hard and firm, and it's a little stiff, and it did irritate my extensor tendons on the top of my foot for that marathon. So it did take that good. I took a full 2 weeks of no running after that for those tendons to actually heal and feel better. If I tried to run after that, it would have really hurt because of just how it grabbed for a marathon distance. I know Coach Lou has, put out some posts on social media as well within our Healthy Runner Facebook group and in our community about lacing options, because he is a Nike Vaporfly wearer himself, and he's tried some different lacing options, and there are different lacing options out there to alleviate pressure on the forefoot. I've utilized them myself for both the Adios Pro 3 as well as the Saucony Pro 3s and 4s, which can be helpful. and give you a little bit more room in the forefoot area. So if you're within our Healthy Runner Facebook community, then you can actually see that post. There's a nice little graphic on different like ways to, tie your shoelaces. If not, if you're listening to this and you want that graphic, just shoot me a DM in Instagram at Spark Healthy Runner. I'll be happy to shoot that over to you. Another third option I would say for you is to maybe try the ASICS Metaspeed Edge or Sky Paris. I personally never tried these, but I've heard some reviews that those might be another option. However, they are not as accommodating in the midfoot and forefoot as most of the reviewers say about the Saucony Pros. I've also tried the Saucony Elites, the last year's version, so their first version of the Elite. And I would say that forefoot area was not as comfortable as the Pros. And I actually wore the Elite for my half marathon last year and decided, because that did irritate my forefoot a little bit as well, I decided for my marathon, then I went to the Pros from the Elites because I didn't feel like they were as accommodating, and they kind of irritated a little bit more. So I guess another kind of fourth shoe out there, talking from experience. So hopefully that was helpful for you. Again, check out the previous episode to learn all about super shoes if you're listening to this and you want to learn more. Next year question that we did receive, and this is one that I think I recently talked about with Coach Whitney in our summer running gear episode that we recently published, is, do you have a specific hydration vest that you would recommend? And the answer is yes. I have tried many hydration vests as well. And I talked about this probably a couple of times on the podcast. So my apologies if you've already heard me say this, but I'm going to say it again. I'm a big fan of the Salomon. It's a unisex advanced skin 12 hydration pack with flask. You can get it right on Amazon. It was $149. Because it does not bounce and it doesn't have the straps on the side that like cut into your skin. You can chafe, gets loose when the water changes, right? So as you're drinking your water, there's going to be more room. So then sometimes the vest can bounce and you constantly have to snug it up with those side straps, during your run. So I've tried a bunch of different models. I had a Nathan model initially, and then I went to, and I can't think of the name off the top of my head right now, another model vest, but it was the same. It was like you had to snug up the side straps to make it all snug. This Salomon vest is great because it has like this mesh elastic on the side. So it's snug to your body. It doesn't bounce at all. And that's what I love about it. So I know Coach Kat has mentioned on the show many times before that she's more of a fan of the open on the side, and she likes that fit. For me, I prefer it more closed, even though it might make you feel perhaps a little hotter. For me, I'm sweating on all my long runs anyway. I'm always hot. So for me, I don't feel a big difference. I don't feel like more closed in. I enjoy not having it bounce around as I'm doing my run. And as I go from like 2 full flasks to empty flask, like there's no change in the fit at all in the vest, and I don't need to make adjustments during the run. So that's the one that I recommend. I found a lot of success with the Salomon Unisex Advanced Skin 12 hydration pack. So check it out with the flasks. That's my personal recommendation. But honestly, everyone's like, they got their favorites, and Coach Kat and Coach Whitney both have their vests that they enjoy and like as well, and they use the bladders in the back. So yeah, give it a whirl for what that's worth. That was my little review on hydration vest. And last fun question. So thank you for whoever submitted this one. And it kind of ties in today's topic of really talking about like training and nutrition, I guess, is what's your favorite snack? And so if we're talking about like treat snack, right, it's apple anything, right? Like give me an apple turnover, an apple pie, yes, apple cake, You want to go apple strudel, like any apple, anything. I'm a sucker for anything apple. So like that's the first thing. And then up here in the Northeast, like, yeah, fall time is like apple season. Oh my goodness, the apple pies, just amazing around here. So many like orchards that make some fresh apple pies. My daughter Olivia actually can make a great homemade apple pie. And then I would say vegan cupcakes, specifically from our local place here in Wallingford, Connecticut, Mr. D's. That is the spot that Coach Latoya and I always do our one-on-one meetings. We meet in person so we can enjoy some nice vegan cupcakes together. So that's like my treat snack. However, my daily snack, I don't have that every day, guys. My daily snack to kind of like help keep me fueled throughout my day. It's my mid-morning snack. So between breakfast and lunch, it's honey wheat pretzels with peanut butter. That's my go-to. Sometimes I'll do almond butter, but yeah, that's my daily snack that I love. And then I also do like a handful of Cape Cod chips with a nice little sandwich, sometimes with lunch. So it's nice, gives you a little carbs, give you some spark, get some sodium, especially during hot, sweaty runs. You need to replenish those electrolytes. So that's a big fan of the kettle chips with a sandwich. I like to pair those together. So thanks for asking that question. And guys, just to like recap, like topics that we covered today in this listener submitted question episode is we talked about like how to get back into training safely after a 2-week break from like a cold or an injury. We talked about like, do you need to do strength training and or speed work if you are a quote unquote casual runner? We talked about balancing tempo runs, like how do we program speed work essentially? How do we balance tempo run with an interval run workout? We talked about like how do you run with a hyperactive dog and like not injure yourself, right? And then we talked about like how to plan your fueling strategy, your hydration strategy for a late race like New York City Marathon. And the main premise there, guys, is you got to practice that in your long runs. Not every single long run, but you got to at minimum get in 2 before race day so you can feel confident towing the line that you have your strategy set. And then should your fueling strategy be different in your weekly runs versus your long run? We covered that. Which super shoes are best for wide feet, specific hydration best recommendations, and then of course my favorite snacks. So if you've struggled with some of these sticking points that we talked about today in terms of training, whether it's like designing your running program, designing your strength training in order to run, or your nutrition plan to fuel those runs, and you would just like clarity on what you need to focus on and in order to take your running to the next level, then you may be a good fit for our signature Spark Healthy Runner coaching program, where you really get the structured run plan, strength plan with motivation, accountability to enjoy lifelong injury-free running. You can easily book a call with me to see if you're a good fit and learn more about the program by just using the link that I have in the show notes, or you can go directly to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/coaching. And guys, I really appreciate you tuning in. If you made it to the end of this episode, you took out like time out of your day to listen in. I greatly appreciate that. And if you're listening to this when this is published, hopefully you're enjoying the end of summer. Hopefully you're taking a little downtime to yourself and you're enjoying some time with family. And for those parents who've moved their kids into college, like kudos to you, because that was no joke. Literally, my wife and I spent 7 straight days going to Targets around the Florida area, like buying stuff, returning stuff, making sure that her room was good to go before we left and flew back up to Connecticut. So yeah, parents, like shout out to you guys, because heck, man, I felt accomplished. It was like a challenge, and we left there and we were like, challenge accepted, done. She's moved in, packed that car, like, man. It was a good challenge. I enjoyed it. So for those that are moving their kids into college, their kids are going back to college. Hopefully you guys are doing well. And yeah, as always, guys, we got to maintain that strong mind, strong body, and let's just keep on running. And if you like this episode, then tune into the podcast, listen to episode 182 to learn all about how to choose your run fuel, or just click the video that I have for you here next. Until next time.